Now everybody, and welcome back to the channel. In this episode we are finally going to be welding out the bobtail conversion on the Niva. So fully welding it out. Now that we've got the MIG welder from Rambledini Welding Supplies, that'll make life much easier. I'm going to show you how I'm going to set that up for welding this out. I'm going to do the roof skin first.
False.
I'm actually going to do it slightly different from the norm. So normally what you'd do is you'd weld on the outside of the panel, and what that would do is that would pull the panel in, and then you could plenish it out if you wanted. But most people, what they'd do is they'd put a light coat of body filler. If it pulled in too far, they'd put a light coat of body filler, and that is why you weld from the outside, because if you weld from the inside it would convex the profile out. It's very hard to make that look right afterwards, whereas it's very easy to make a concave panel look right afterwards. On the roof skin, it's actually dipping in slightly on our roof skin, so I'm actually going to weld it from the inside in the hope that it pulls that panel up, and it'll just make it look a bit better. I mean, it's only because I know really that it's been done that I can see it dipping in slightly. I'm being a bit fussy really, but we'll see how it goes. First of all, I want to show you the wheels that I've had powder coated, so I'll do that. I'll show you them now. There they are. They're the wheels. I got these done at K&M Powder Coating in Featherstone, West Yorkshire. Danny there, he did a cracking job of them. He also got them done in 24 hours. I dropped them off on Thursday afternoon, about 3 o'clock. And the day after, which was yesterday, Friday, I went and picked them up at 3 o'clock again. So in 24 hours, he'd had them shot blasted and powder coated. I couldn't decide what colour to go for, so I figured I'm going to go with one of everything. And when I get a spare, I'm probably going to go like bright pink for the spare as well. Be a little bit out there, outlandish. But I'm really happy with them. I think they're going to look really cool against the yellow on the bear. So yeah, cool looking. Right, let's get back to welding out this car. Right, so we're now going to set up for what we're going to be welding. On ladders, the bodywork is about 1mm, so I'm just going to go 1mm for now. We're in the mag process. For now, we're just going to stick with 2T, which is where you got to hold the trigger down. As I learn more and more about this, I'll start messing around with 4T and whatnot. I'm not overly concerned about my wire stick out. I'm just going to leave that in synergic, because it'll figure it all out for itself. And my inductance I've actually put to 10 because I'm doing body work, and if I put it to 10, it'll make that weld puddle nice and flat, so we don't have to do so much grinding afterwards, is what I'm hoping for anyway. So if we go then into synergic, we're on argon 18% CO2 at the moment, which is wrong. We are actually going to be running pure CO2 because I'm a tight Yorkshireman. So pure CO2, and we are on 1mm wire. It's quite impressive really that this will go down to 0.8mm material thickness on 1mm wire. That's actually very impressive. So that's that sorted. And then if we hold this dial down here, because I want to set up a like a pulse almost. So what it is actually, I think they call it timed spot welding. I'm going to call it timed tack welding for now until I find out officially if that's what they call it. So if we hold that down for 5 seconds, and then if we scroll through all these, so these are all like the various things you can actually mess around with. But if we go to here, this allows us to set up like a tack feature, so we can hold our trigger down permanently, and it will place a tack for 0.5 of a second, and then it will pause or stop welding for 0.3 of a second, and then it will actually place another tack for 0.5 of a second, which for bodywork is, I just think that's brilliant, to be honest. So I'm actually going to leave these here. While I was playing with the welder down at Jake's place, this is how we set it up, but that was on 2mm material thickness. So I'm going to see how much I like this, and then I might come back to that and just change it. So then we just go save and exit. Happy days. Now, because I've changed my gas type, I am actually going to press and hold program and save, and then exit. And then if I press it, so I'm just going to overwrite program 1 and save it. So if I wanted to change, so if I wanted to save it as a new program, I'd hold it again but I'd scroll to program 2, which we might do because sometimes I don't want to be using the tack. So I might also have a play with this and set up a program without the tack feature. So it's just a constant weld. Let's leave that back out of that. Right, let's get cracking on anyway and have a bit of a play. Welcome back to what is day 2 of welding this Lada Niva up. Yesterday I achieved the grand total of jack all. Absolutely nothing. All I managed to do was weld a tiny little corner at the back of this this Niva. The reason is the welder managed to weld these joints up with the 1mm wire, but it did struggle, and I struggled. It actually did better than I would have been able to set up on an old school welder. But the issue is, with it being 1mm wire, and this being like a maximum 1mm bodywork, but then I've got, like, in some areas, like a 2mm gap. Most of it's about 1mm gap, but in some areas it's 2mm gap. So it was just struggling to fill that gap in. So I thought to myself, I'm going to go get some 0.8 welding wire from Ask in Kippax. And ironically, it was uncanny. At the same time, Dale, the cameraman, sent me a message saying, fancy going to Ask in Kippax. Ask is like a auto spares company in Kippax. It's quite local to me. And it's a bit of an Aladdin's cave. So if you've never been there before, you spend hours just perusing the shelves. They've got like everything you can ever think of. And unfortunately, Dale had never been to Ask in Kippax. So he sent me that message and I was like, yeah, sure, I'm planning on going there anyway. Kevin picked me up. We headed over to Ask. Went there and he spent the whole afternoon perusing the shelves of Ask. And I just achieved absolutely jack all because of that. I can't really blame him. It's a great shop. So if you've never been there, make sure to check it out if you're local to this area, because it is brilliant. Anyway, so I've now got my 0.8 filler wire, welding wire, sorry, fitted into the welder. I've got to adjust the settings, and I'll also show you what I did manage to achieve yesterday. So this is the corner I managed to weld yesterday. Managed to weld all this in here. And it came out all right. You know, it's come out all right. It's just, you know, you can see the size of the gap there, and it was just struggling. It was just blowing holes. I did wonder whether I could have sorted that with the inductance, which I might have a play about with at some point, just by reducing the inductance to create a firmer puddle. See if that would have helped. But it did work all right. And if we have a look at the backside in a moment, the penetration's nice on it as well. So it has fused lovely. It was just slow. The process was slow, and it was frustrating because I know if I put 0.8 filler in, it'll be a lot better. It'll be a lot quicker. So that's the route that we've gone. I don't know how much of this you're going to be able to see, but hopefully you can see the penetration we've got on those welds. It's fused lovely. So we fitted 0.8 filler wire into our welding wire into our welder now. So we've just got to change our programming. So we go to there, and then we go into Synergic. We flick through until we get to 0.8, and then we go with OK, and we hold that down. We select Save on program 1, which is body tack, because we're changing an existing program. So we go with Save, and hold on. That's it. We're on 0.8 filler, mild steel, CO2, 1mm material thickness, and we'll see how that goes. And I've got that on tacking mode, which I set up yesterday. And then, like I say, at some point, I will make a body one without the tacking system on it. What we'll do is I'll actually save that to 1mm material thickness. Save. And save. There we go. So now, if I go into program 2, it'll show that. And then program 1, and it's set to 1mm material thickness, 0.8 filler wire, and CO2. Then we just crack on and start welding.
All right, so because of my incredibly professional approach to recording these videos, most of my audio didn't record, so I'm going to have to do a bit of a voiceover here. But basically, what I did is I finished welding out the right side of this car, and it went very well indeed. Like, there's very little distortion, basically, especially at that point there that I've just panned past. But it went really well, it blended in nicely, and with the bowler, now that I got that 0.8 wire in that bit there where I'm rubbing there, that's where the minimum distortion is. It's very good. But with the bowler with that 0.8 wire made it look, fairly easy, to be honest. But like there, I'm just talking about how I'm basically, I could get away, I reckon, with just a high build primer essentially on this side. And then here, I'm just welding out the other side. This side didn't go as well, which is typical considering this is the side that I'm going to see most of the time, obviously, because this is the driver's side for me, being left-hand drive. But a couple of things I did address whilst recording this is I just wanted to explain things like torch angles. So you'll notice that I'm actually, I am welding downhill, so this is how you do it anyway, but I always point my torch into the weld that I'm doing. So I'll use a pull angle basically on bodywork, and that's because the weld that you're welding is actually thicker than the material thickness. This is my thinking on it anyway. So on thin material, I will always point the torch back towards where I've already welded, and then that allows me to build the material up. Some people like to use a push angle because they work off the theory that you're then pushing the material ahead of you. But I use a pull technique. I find I get a lot less holes blowing through when I do that. You can see I'm doing the same thing here again. And I'm just doing that multiple series of tacks. Now, if we were particularly worried about distortion, what I'm doing here is incredibly frowned upon. So you see, like, I'm doing about 2 inches each time and then moving around. Now, if we were very nervous about getting any distortion, we'd do one tack and then move elsewhere on the car and do a tack there, and then come back to a different place and do another tack elsewhere. And that's how we'd have to do it to reduce that distortion. Now, me personally, I'm not overly concerned. This thing's going to get dented and banged, and most of these panels are going to get chopped out again anyway when I do my arch flares to fit the 33s. You can also see me just banging out some distortion. So that corner there, that was where it was particularly bad. And then just doing this vertical weld. Overall, the whole job went very well. I was very happy with it. The bowler did a good job as well. Again, you can, like this, the way I did that then, I went all the way from that top edge and right down to where I've just skipped a bit there, and that would be really frowned upon if we were aiming for zero distortion basically. Doing these top bits was fairly easy, no issues whatsoever. And then you can just see, so here there was, this is where I tacked it up with TIG, and there was a bit of porosity, so it caused me some issues. I should have really ground those tacks out, but it's not too bad. Once I blend it in, it's all right. So we're now ready to blend these welds in, and different people have different ways of doing it, but I like to use what's called a flex disc, which is what I'm holding in my hand there, just out of camera, as like I say, very professional recording. And a flex disc, these are phenomenal. So that's the backing pad for the flex disc. You can get different types of backing pads. That's quite a flexible one, as you can see by me bending it there. It's made out of rubber. You can get some that are plastic backing caps, and they don't have any flex at all. I don't particularly like them, not for body work anyway. These the way these flex is just right for bodywork. It just, you know, lets you get your angle and gouge it out. The reason I like the flex disc is it doesn't put a lot of heat in the material. It takes it off that fast that the heat doesn't build up particularly fast at all in the material. You have got to be careful though. You can get carried away with them, and you can actually really badly thin the material because it takes off the material so fast. So you really need to be watching that weld, and as soon as you've got that weld taken down, stop grinding. And then for the recesses and stuff like that, I just use a bog standard flat disc. You can see the angle that I'm using the grinder at there, so almost flat, and just taking that material down. I did actually thin a bit of this material out, a bit of the parent metal out, just in the middle of that panel where I'm grinding now, a little bit higher than where I'm grinding. So I might have to patch that. I don't know. I'll see how I feel at a later date. I might. It was just a bit thinner than I'd like. But you can, I mean, this is sped up, but the flex discs rip it out so fast. If you're going to buy some flex discs, I recommend actually buying the 3M flex discs because they last a lot longer. If you look at the commercials for the 3M flex discs, they go on about how the abrasive material they used is shaped to a specific shape to make it last longer, and you think to yourself, what a load of rubbish. But when I compare it to something like the Klingspor discs, the 3M definitely last longer than the Klingspor discs. I don't know what these ones are actually that I'm using at the moment. When it comes to bodywork, like on this one, the actual prepping and cutting of the bobtail, and then putting it in place and everything didn't take very long at all. It was actually very quick. What took the time on this conversion, and it's the usual story, is welding it out and then prepping that weld afterwards, cleaning that weld down. On thin sheet metal, especially on an old car like this, on the thin sheet metal, when you've got varied gaps, varied material thickness because of any kind of corrosion, you know, we'd like to say that we get rid of all the corrosion, but sometimes it's not always possible. And then obviously, because these are pressed panels, it's thinner in some spots than the others. So that's what takes the time, is the welding out of the car. So you can see once I've finished sanding parts smooth, I go in there with the plenishing hammer, just plenish that flat, and then I'm also using prying tools at the back of the panel. In this case, the prying tool is actually a hammer handle, and just prying the distortion out, basically, giving it quite a bit of grief, quite frankly. You know, that's sometimes what you've got to do. You got to just make it pry it back straight again. But it went quite well. And that's it. That's all welded out, plenished within a reasonable standard for what this car is going to be. And where my hand is right now is probably not going to be there when the car's finished, actually, because that's going to be a flare, fender flare, an arch flare. So that just won't exist, that part of the bodywork, to be honest. So I've just got the roof skin basically to do after this. But overall, I was very happy with how it went. It went incredibly well, really. So no complaints at all. A little bit of distortion where I'm pointing at there. I just couldn't quite get that to line up properly. Like I say, it's the driver's side, so it's going to be the worst side, isn't it? It's always to be expected. You might question why I've welded it all out if I'm going to be chopping most of it out again. And the reason is because it gives me a blank slate. If I've welded it all out, it's a bit like starting on a car that's not been modified, essentially. So I like to weld it all up. It gives me a better structure to build off, basically. A nice foundation, essentially, to start building upon. So I've just noticed there that I've forgotten to grind that flat, I think, which is what I'll be cracking on with next. I won't show that in the video because it'll just take up time. So everything that we've done so far has been relatively easy in terms of bodywork, because it's all been outside the car. And this is the part where it starts getting a bit sort of tedious and tiresome, is when you have to start twisting and bending and climbing in and out of the car to start welding up. But that's just part of the job. You know, you got to put up with it, basically. So what I'm doing here is I'm literally plug welding, or some people like to call it a rosette weld. I call it a plug weld. And I'm just using the shaft of the hammer to press the panel into its mating panel, and then putting a plug weld in there, working my way along it, and then afterwards I go in with the flex disc and the flap disc and just blend it in. There's still a bit more to do on these. I'll do a light bit of blending and maybe a very light coating of body filler. Unfortunately, it's one of those panels where I couldn't quite get in there to plenish it all flat. This bit here, it was just a MIG weld straight down. I might just tickle that with a wire brush and just leave it there. Really happy with how that back corner meets up there. That looks almost factory, you know, the way that blends in there with the panel pressing and everything like that. Very happy with that. I'm chuffed to bits with that. Again, this side might just need a light coating of body filler afterwards. Again, it might just be a case of a bit of high build primer will fix that. And I might not even be bothered with doing the body filler. It might just be, you know, getting a bit carried away for the purpose that this car is going to be used for. But overall, like I say, I'm really happy. Now, I've just said about how I'm really happy with that back corner and how it looks factory. And unfortunately, when we fit the 33-inch tyres to this, that arch tub is just going to be going completely. So we're going to be maybe 2-3 inches higher up with the arch tub. So we're actually going to be cutting into that existing panel anyway. So, you know, that's the issues with modifying cars, is you can't always make it look super duper genuine. So we're onto the roof skin, and this was the bit that I knew would cause us some issues. Now, because, like I say, I'm not overly concerned with this being perfection, and I was just in an incredibly lazy mood, and I was fed up with clambering in and out of this car and twisting and bending. So I did it in a way that is, like I say, frowned upon. Because what I should do is put a tack in one spot, move on to another part. Whereas what I actually did is I welded about 2 or 3 inches, knowing it would cause all sorts of distortion, and sure enough, it did. But I'm now going to have to get a plenishing hammer. It did cause a bit more than I was expecting to be honest. So I'm going to have to either make or buy myself a pneumatic plenishing hammer. They're bloody expensive, so I might end up making one, to be honest. But what I did do is I welded from the inside of the car. Because the roof skin was already dipping down, I figured that it would pull that roof skin up and maybe straighten it out. But because I was incredibly lazy and didn't do it the right way by putting tacks all over the shop, it did cause a lot of distortion. So I'm just going to have to get a plenishing hammer at a later date and stretch that back out again, because obviously what's happened with welding is it's shrunk, and that's why it's distorted.
Right, well, that's it basically fully welded out. What you guys would do next is you'd actually weld the floor pan in place, including where the box section is. But I'm going to be doing some fairly heavy modifications back here, which will be featured in later videos. So I'm completely ignoring that for now. Ready for the modifications I'm going to be doing. So that comes at a later date. But for now, all I'm going to do is lash some primer on this. Just any old primer, because I'm actually going to be, I think I'm going to rust bullet, what's called rust bullet, the whole car, including the white one as well at a later date. But this is, I'm going to strip the whole thing down in terms of paint, get it all back down to bare metal, and then paint it with rust bullet. Rust bullet is phenomenal. It's like the most awesome primer I've ever seen. Me and my dad, we had a roll cage on a Unimog that we still are building, and the cage sat outside for like must be 4 or 5 years with this rust bullet primer on. Never got any rust on it in that whole time. It was just sat outside and it never rusted. It was just awesome stuff. So I'm going to do the whole shell in that primer, and then keeping it the yellow. So for now, I'm just lashing this on, just to stop, like I said earlier on, with it being CO2 that we're using as a welding gas, it creates an acidic weld and it'll rust very quickly. And in terms of the weld on the roof skin, it did exactly what I expected it to do, and it caused a whole lot of distortion. So I'm going to have to spend a bit of time, and it might even be an excuse to go out and buy myself a fancy plenishing hammer, pneumatic plenishing hammer, just to get that to look right. I'll probably even put a reinforcement like the factory do to stop that distortion as well. This is just an etch primer. It's what I have lying around. I'll also do the inside like I am now. Basically anywhere I can get access to on this weld, I'm just going to lash it with primer. Stop that oxygen getting into it. Lovely. Whenever you're planning on welding a car up, don't look at something. What a lot of people do is they'll look at an area that's got rot on it and they'll treat it really delicately. And what you want to do is you actually want to do the opposite. You want to attack it and you want to beat the living daylights out of it, basically, to find out where that rot stops. So like on here, this had like a lot of bubbling on it. And what I did is I attacked it with a wire wheel on the grinder, and that ripped all the rot back. So I can now see that all of this around here is rotten. We've got a big hole here. But as we get further down, it gets a bit better. And then I don't know if you can see that bottom corner. No, you can't. Just here, we've got more holes around here. So I'm in two minds. I might make this panel or make patches. So I'll, where does it start and end? Just to zoom out a little bit. There we go. I'll either make a panel that goes here and then a panel for here, or I'll actually buy this whole panel. I assume you can still buy this. I don't know. You might not be able to with it being a... actually, no, you should be able to, because I'd imagine it's the same on the later tailgates as well. So I might even just buy this whole panel, depending on the turnaround time, how soon it'll arrive, and how much it is as well. And then I also did along the gutter edge as well. Fortunately, the gutter doesn't seem too bad. But like I say, never be afraid of hitting something hard with a wire wheel or a hammer just to see where the rot starts and finishes. Because if you don't, all it'll do is you'll try to avoid causing those holes, but all you'll do is put all your time and effort into making it look nice, and then in a year or two, that rot just comes back through anyway, and then you've got to redo all that work again. So do it right the first time, and you won't have to do it again. That's what I'm saying, basically. Right, I'm just going to lash some primer on this as well. I don't know why, to be honest, because it's knackered. Job's a good one. This window on this side is going to be polycarbonate. I think I'm going to make it so it screws into the window flange. But overall, I'm really happy with it. I'll just show you the settings I had for the welder. All right, so these are the settings I had. I actually had it on program 2, if I remember right. Pretty sure I had on program 2. Yeah, and that's with no time tacking at all. It's literally just like a standard welder, basically. All right. So I had it on program 2, which gives me a material thickness of 1mm. I turned it up to 1mm, 2.5 meters a minute. But then what I did, obviously my my wire thickness is 0.8, gas is CO2. Material thickness 1mm, 2.5 meters a minute, 18.4 volts. But what I did is I actually trimmed my arc length by 0.5. which gave me a much firmer puddle. It stopped it blowing holes through, basically. It allowed that puddle to freeze a bit faster. That made a big difference, that did. When I was running on just the standard synergic, like so, it seemed to struggle a bit. I turned it to 0.5, and instantly it made it so that I wasn't chasing that hole all the time. It was very good. Simple as that. That's my settings. I forgot I saved now under program 2. I've actually got it saved so that it sets it up for 0.8. So I do have to turn it up to 1mm. But again, because it's a synergic machine, it figures everything out for me and changes all my wire speed and everything. So it's easy as easy as going program 2, and then I just turn it up to 1mm, and the job's sorted. Simple. And that's it all welded up. It's gone very well. I'm happy with most of it. The only bit I'm not really happy about is the roof skin, and I predicted that would happen because it's such a big panel. With no the only bits that did go right on the roof skin, which again I predicted, is where this curve is. The rest of it's like a bloody mirror in a crazy mirror, one of them that you get at the theme parks. But everywhere else, there's very little distortion. I'm very happy with it. It's going to take the tiniest amount of body filler, and happy days. There's a bit of rot on this gutter here, and my actual weld is here. So what I might do, from the point of view of strength, I suppose you'd call it, but I'll actually cut from here to here and make that gutter panel as new. And then I've actually got my weld staggered. It's not a massive deal, but it will help. I'll also get in here with the grinder on the wire wheel at some point, rip into that, see where the rot is. There's a bubble here, I'll attack that. Basically anywhere where there's any rot, I will attack with the wire wheel, just to see if there's any holes there and if it really needs filling in and cutting out and welding up and whatnot. I spent, it must be 10 years doing bodywork on cars, and therefore I can't imagine anything more boring than watching me weld this thing up. But you let me know in the comments below whether you actually want to see me attack all the rot on this, and how I'd go about doing it. A lot of it will be the same old, so I won't show the same thing over and over again, but there is tips and tricks that you can do to minimize distortion and stuff like that. It just, to me, it creates slow content, but let me know, basically. Stuff like the sills and everything like that, you will be seeing, because I'll be making custom sills for it. And the front end, that's going all tubular, so you'll see me make that front tubular end. And then the wings are gonna, from the outside it won't look anything special, but when you lift the bonnet up, it'll all be a tubular front end on it. So all that's going to be done and dusted. But the bits like like this corner here, that gutter, do you want to see me do that, or is that just going to be really boring for you? But that's it for this video. I'm so glad I finally got that welded up. It's been doing my head in, just being sat there unwelded. Thank you for watching. It's much appreciated. If you like what we see, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell. It's very much appreciated. And until the next one, cheers for now. And that's it. That's it. All welded up. And that's it. All welded up.